morning, everyone. My name is Edmundo Lijo. I am an assistant city attorney with the city of St. Paul, and I'm charged with managing and developing the Immigrant and Refugee Affairs program for the city of St. Paul. And I am also one members of the leadership team from the St. Paul side of this Gateways for Growth initiative, and I was involved in the development of the welcoming plan, the Journey to Belonging in the Twin Cities report, which we are discussing today. Before we get started, I'd like to make a couple of quick announcements. I just want to remind everyone this summit, including this breakout session, is being recorded, and there will be a link shared with participants as soon as it's available. You'll be getting an email, and you can view the other sessions and review this session as well at a later date if you'd like. Today's format will allow for questions, but we ask that you submit your questions through the chat function, and I will try to get to those questions as many as we can, and also present them to the panelists. You can also engage with us on social media using at MPLS Chamber or at Minneapolis Chamber and at SPACC and hashtag We Belong MSP if you're interested in following along on social media. With that, let's introduce our panelists for today. We have three panelists who I'm very excited to discuss our topic, which is our session on policy and what policies we may be able to implement or think about based on the findings of our report. We have with us today Brooke Antilla from the International Institute in St. Paul, or actually the International Institute of Minnesota in St. Paul, Jean Gelgalou of African Economic Development Solutions and Little Africa in St. Paul, and Rita Dibble, University Vice President at Metro State University. We'll start with Brooke. Brooke, why don't you tell us a little bit about what your work and what you do for the International Institute.
I don't see Brooke. She was there and she may have dropped off. Okay.
All right. Well, why don't we start with Jean then? Good morning, Jean. Why don't you tell us a little bit about the African Economic Development Solutions and the work you're doing in St. Paul?
Good morning. Thank you for inviting me. My name is Jean Gelgalou, founder, president, and CEO at African Economic Development Solutions, AEDS. And Little Africa is a nonprofit organization that serves African immigrants in Minnesota. We're based in St. Paul. We serve a Twin City metro-wide. We do business development training program for startup or expanding businesses. We do technical assistance in different areas. We are a lender. We provide loan to a small business. We do financial and home ownership education, workforce development, and creative placemaking, which is the intersection of art and culture for economic development strategy.
Thank you, Jean. Rita, would you like to tell us a little bit about your work at Metro State?
Absolutely. Thank you. And good morning, everyone. My name is Rita Dibble. I am the Vice President for University Advancement and the Executive Director of the Metro State Foundation. I also work with external relations, and what we do at Metro State that would actually pertain to our topics today is that we leverage the strength of our alumni. I'm very happy to report that Jean is an alumnus of Metro State. Very pleased to serve on the panel with him. We leverage the strength and the achievements of our alumni to shape policy when regards to immigrants, refugees, and actually most underestimated communities. Metro State has a student population that is 52% self-identified BIPOC population, and almost 40% of our employee base is BIPOC. And so it really behooves us, it's good business sense for us to be able to leverage policy to make the Twin Cities a welcoming place for folks who haven't felt welcome yet.
Thank you, Rita. As we begin to look at policy development and what we may be able to do in the future, what we're doing. Oh, Brooke is back.
Boy.
Good. All right. Why don't we take a second then? Brooke, why don't you introduce yourself and tell us about your work at the International Institute?
Happy to do that. So we are just coming back to the building after a couple of years of construction, and I was in another space with a hotspot, and I don't know if that's what disconnected me, but I'm at my desk now, and hopefully this is going to work with the Ethernet cable and everything. So I'm Brooke Antilla. I work at the International Institute of Minnesota. I've been a part of the organization for about 21 years. I currently manage our medical career advancement program, which is part of our career pathway programming at the Institute. I've been doing that, for about 10 years. So what this program does is we provide support and assistance to folks who are studying medical careers and help them advance through the medical career pathway through scholarships, wraparound support, tutoring, tutoring for NCLEX, that kind of thing. We're also hopefully going to be expanding to support internationally trained professionals and IMGs, international medical graduates, kind of pending the outcome of a couple of proposals. And in addition to our career pathway work at the Institute, we also have refugee resettlement services, immigration services, language services, and then the career pathway in medical and hospitality careers. So that's just a brief introduction to me. Let me get my bearings here for a minute.
Okay, thanks. Thanks, Brooke. Well, then I'll start with Jean. Why don't we start? Let's take a look at, I think in developing solutions, we need to look at barriers. Can each of you give us an idea of what you're seeing as the barriers to economic development and entry into the workforce for immigrant refugee communities and new Americans in the Twin Cities? Jean, why don't we start with you? What are you seeing as the barriers?
Oh, thank you, Edmundo. There's a lot of factors in there to entry to the workforce, and I call it the untapped asset, which is the foreign educated and driving CAPS is really is untapped asset for us, and as a region. The barrier to the education is one factor, not the foreign education not translate to this country, and not getting opportunity is another factors, and also the place is another big factor that these days now. People are looking for place more than the job itself, and what that means, in my view, means if the place is not attractive or accepting people, people leave from that job to find where they fit. So the coming in the upcoming generation, and based on Dr. Catherine research, what showed that the young look for place over job. What that really means in our region, it means we don't have a choice than making a place that people see themselves fit to the fabric of society. They work 4 hours, 8 hours at the job. There is another 16 hours that they have to spare. They want after work where they can go, what social fabric they can fit. So it's not about only attracting talent, it's retaining talent is a big work. So they can come, they work. If they don't see themselves, they will leave. I think that is a big work that is happening. And also we see the great resignation that happening in other area also. That's the workforce challenges is real. What I'm seeing in our business, actually, we work with small business owners. A small business have a challenge to attract drivers, especially transportation business, home healthcare businesses. They have hard time attracting employees. So what I see, there's a lot of factors in, and also the biggest part I see in my views, place so people see themselves with the fabric of society, I think. And also, some of the organizations not ready to accept diverse workforce. It's readiness, not only providing the job itself, not ready to accommodate people who don't look like us, right? Someone who don't believe the way we believe, dress the way we dress, and worship the way we worship. Is organizational readiness is a critical part of this challenge. So it's not only one factors, there are multiple factors that, in my view, see the challenge bears to workforce.
Thanks, Gene. It's very, very interesting, and I think our report bears that out as well. That it's really a question of, if people feel they belong in a community, they're going to come here and they're going to stay here, and that is the beginning of overcoming many of these barriers. Is that people feel that they can be committed to this area, and I thank you for identifying that. Rita, what do you think some of the barriers that you're seeing through Metro State that our immigrant refugee communities are experiencing or trying to overcome?
Right. Well, I will address one elephant in the room. Our climate is not brilliant. So just saying, coming to Minnesota from warmer countries, it becomes a bit of a barrier. But more seriously speaking, refugees and new citizens come to us with a great amount of strength in terms of lived experience as well as credentials, which may or may not translate into our system. And while we don't want to dumb down the skill acquisitions that happen for our workforce, we certainly need to find a mechanism to be able to translate degrees, work experiences, other credentialing from other parts of the world into our system. So one of the pathways that we need to develop is a systematic approach of taking lived experience and giving credit for prior learning. And this does not apply only to refugees and immigrants. I will give you an example where it applies to people who are veterans. Veterans often have served several tours of duty. They have acquired skill sets in leadership, in management, in project development, in many kinds of things, and they've shown proven results. But yet when they come back, because of their high school diploma or their community college certificate, AAS degree that they have, they do not have access to jobs that can best leverage their strengths. So this applies to almost anybody who comes in with from the non-traditional way of acquiring credentials. And we need to be able to manage that. The other barrier that we see specifically for refugees and immigrants coming in from abroad, they are holding competing responsibilities. They typically have a job, they typically have a family, they have a lot of competing responsibilities. For them, it is not so easy to step into an internship or go back to school because, again, they can't spend time in class 8 to 9:30 Monday, Wednesday, Friday. It just does not work with their schedule or does not work with childcare. So again, there are all these competing responsibilities that they somehow need to fit their credentialing into their life. Where we lose out because of these barriers is, as a community, we lose out highly skilled, highly motivated people who have shown that they can work hard and overcome great obstacles. So it behooves us to influence policy to make sure that we have some kind of a pathway of integration in the economic fabric of our community. I mean, of course, the culture in place is extremely important because if people don't feel at home, they won't stay. But if they can't earn their bread, they won't be able to stay. So I see that as just a couple of barriers that we could possibly do something about.
Thank you, Rita. That's very insightful, and I think we'll get more into the discussion as we go on about people's credentials and how foreign credentials and foreign skills and talent that was developed outside the U.S. can be utilized and developed. Brooke, what about you? What are you seeing as the barriers in the work you're doing with many immigrants and refugees at the International Institute?
Yes, thank you. I'm glad I went third because I agree with and I would love to add to what both of you said from my perspective, because we work both with clients during their education through the college system, and then also on employment and placement and supporting and helping folks advance once they have achieved that credential and career advancement. So first of all, relating to what Jean said about a place. I think, a community, a culture of welcome in the place of employment is critical, because it's not just about reaching out to the immigrant population to fill positions, but what are you doing once you have them? Well, how are you helping folks feel included in the workplace? If this population is growing more and more into filling these roles, how has your place of employment made adjustments to welcome them? Thinking about that, and I can think of many examples over the years from clients who haven't felt welcomed, where a place wasn't made for them, and their unique needs, because yes, they're adjusting to a new place, a new climate, raising families, putting kids through school, learning English, all of this at the same time, sometimes having a lack of transportation. And each of these things can derail folks from that career upgrade or getting that credential. And clients that we work with go to extraordinary lengths to achieve what their goals are. I've had clients send children back home to live with mom in Kenya while studying to get that nursing license. And then, because of the way things work, several years later, they're bringing their kids back here. So it's extraordinary lengths that people go to. I think also, basic needs, the transportation needs, childcare, rent, mortgage, food assistance, all of these things, utilities, all of those can become something that can get in the way of achieving goals. So I think there need to be resources and supports to help folks make that leap into higher, into growth positions, or positions that can help them grow their careers. I also wanted to talk about, for internationally trained folks, there's the cost of the relicensing process for foreign trained nurses, for doctors. There's competition with folks who graduated here when they maybe aren't being seen as equivalent. There's understanding our test taking culture when the test isn't necessarily testing the content as much as it is, your test taking skill. And then I think also sometimes a lack of mental health support when people need to have this challenge of an identity change, when you're not able to work at the level that you were trained back home and needing to reintegrate in a new place. So those are some things that occurred to me.
Thanks, Brooke. You raised so many of the topics really that were covered in our report, and it really is, has to be a comprehensive approach to finding solutions. I agree, but I want to take pieces of this as you all have brought up some very, very important topics and issues. But I'd like to start with, there are a lot of people coming to the United States with skills and education that they are not able to utilize. What barriers specifically are these people facing, and how can we develop policies, and what kinds of policies should we develop that will help them to realize their full potential? Why don't we start with Rita on this one? Rita, what do you think?
Well, one of the policies that we need to develop is actually less a policy, but more a pathway. So there should be a comprehensive pathway for a new immigrant or a new resident of any stripe coming from, it could be from Mexico, or it could sometimes be from Iowa, honestly, because the point is you don't know where the immigrant first landed and where they are going to come in. But one of the things we can create is a pathway to do an assessment, a skills assessment, just like we do an assessment of needs, we should do an assessment of skills. And if they can go through a skills assessment, then they will know the path forward to form their career here and form the economic base for them to turn their lives around. The other thing is something that Metro State has been doing for a while, and that is giving credit for prior learning. I know that it is catching on more and more now, where you can take someone's life experience and translate that into actual college credits. I will give you the most impactful example I have seen in my time at Metro State. We had a 50-something lady who came back to college with a high school diploma, who wanted to open her own business and wanted a business degree. She was a native of Minnesota, and she said she wanted to take the classes from the beginning. And the counselor actually sat down and said, well, you probably have done some project management. And she said, no, I have done nothing. I've only been a housewife. I've done nothing. So the counselor asked her, have you ever hosted Thanksgiving? And the lady said, yes, I have. I have a big family. How many people at your Thanksgiving table? She said, oh, there were 26. She said, oh, really? You must have a commercial kitchen. She said, no, just my own kitchen. Well, how did you manage this Thanksgiving meal for 26? And this wonderful lady went to describe a classic project management system. She said, I planned 3 months ahead. This is how I made my pies. They were made a week ahead. She had the whole project laid out from start to finish, including budgeting, including service, and of course, right down to the product. The end result of that conversation was that she did not have to take a project management course towards her business degree, because her life experience was going to teach her nothing more that she did not know. It was just going to put it in words. There are people who come, immigrants especially, come to us with extraordinary talent and extraordinary experience. And as Brooke mentioned, in the healthcare field, we do not want nurses who were nurses in Afghanistan to be doing, to be cleaning toilets here. We really don't want that. We want them to actually find a pathway to nursing, understanding that credentialing is very important. And in healthcare, it's a matter of life and death. And so there needs to be a special assessment system which takes care of ensuring that these skills are indeed there, that they can be translated, and along with all the help, we will allow people to make careers when they come to the United States. I don't know if that answers the question, Edmundo, but
yes, I think it does. And it raises more questions from a policy perspective. It sounds to me like Metro State really is developing some of those special assessments and that programming which would allow for this. And again, that leads to a question I will ask later about how do we get there are a lot of existing programs, and how do we get that information to people who need it, to the immigrant refugees who are coming and saying, hey, you should be going to talk to people at Metro State or International Institute, or let's go talk to Jean. So that question will be coming up later, but I think you raise an excellent point in that we need to be able to help people to be assessed. Jean, what do you think? What are you seeing as far as how are you seeing people being assessed or not being assessed, and how can we help them to get there?
Thank you. I think creating opportunity to resources, or we say resource, create a resource that help them for the pathway that Rita is mentioning. Metro is exemplary in doing this. So how can we have resources if nurses want to be nurse here without changing the standard? Give them opportunity resources so they can achieve that. And I know some of the credentials, foreign credential, might not be compatible with here, and can be achieved through providing that resources. Some of the, when as a refugee, as an immigrant, you come with hope and dream and but empty pocket. Expecting doctor to be a doctor, go back through that process, And without someone who don't have any resource, the first thing as a migrant you do is survival. You have to survive as human. The education and the other stuff are secondary. So if we give that hope and dream, opportunity backed by resources, they can achieve. I think in the policy area can be a resource, provide the resource that needed so they can achieve the credential here without deviating the standard we have here.
Okay, you know, that again, that sounds like a very concrete policy proposal, is that we need to help people with resources, housing and income. And you know, we've seen that, you know, we're seeing that right now as we are welcoming Afghan who are fleeing Afghanistan, and we've resettled a fair number here in the Twin Cities, and that's a concern for them, is survival. And I think making sure that we provide, you know, in the past, the resettlement programs of the United States provided people with about 3 months of rent and stability. And then after 3 months, they were expected to begin working and start kind of really managing themselves. And, you know, I think 3 months is a very short period of time. And that's becoming very evident as some of the Afghan people who have resettled are passing their not only their 3 months, but 6 months here in the States, and people are worried. And I think you're right. I think policy has to be we as policymakers need to think about how do we continue to support people while they're here, so that they can develop the skills they have and really make major contributions to our society, which they're capable of. Brooke, I'll ask you then the same question we were just discussing. What do you think? I mean, you work with a lot of people in that situation who are trying to really utilize the skills they have and
Absolutely. Yeah. Just adding to the knowledge that we know of folks who are underutilizing their skills. There was a survey conducted at mHealth Fairview to see how many employees and how many of their family members aren't using medical training that they had from back home, and over 300 employees responded that they or their family members had training that wasn't being used. And we know there's a roster of immigrant medical graduates of over 350 in the state who are not working at their level of training. And we have lawyers, doctors, psychiatrists, engineers, nurses, other professionals all come through our nursing assistant training, our English language training, our college readiness class, leadership class. And one more example, you were speaking of the Afghani evacuees. I've had a couple of we had 3 doctors come through the Institute. One said, I just need to get in the hospital. I'll do anything. Could I work as a phlebotomist, you know, drawing blood, you know, at $15 an hour job, or maybe $17.50, you know, or somebody we know who just needed to put food on the table. He's folding laundry, and he's a physician, right? So I think what we need to do and put legislation behind is removing the barriers that are in place through funding for employment and college navigation, which is part of what we do. And also those barriers that exist in our higher ed system. One big one that we advocate for the removal of is the developmental education system, which is a below college level class that students are using financial aid to pay for, or they're paying, you know, to take ESL, to take reading and writing classes at the college level or at college, but it's not giving them credit for a college level. So adult basic ed already provides these classes for free to students, but they're not necessarily getting that whole picture when they first go to a college and enroll. And I've encountered somebody who came to the Institute. She was about to start practical nursing. That's a 40 credit diploma program. And she already had 63 credits of ESL and developmental education. So put that in perspective. If you think of one thing, from this takeaway. You know, it's such a disservice. She had used up all her Pell Grants. She didn't have enough funding to go forward and have her actual career training paid for, right?
Mhm.
Because of lack of that knowledge. And when I think about a foreign nurse who comes in and maybe they want to recertify here just to learn our system, you know, do they know how to find NCLEX passing rates for different schools? You know, I've had somebody else who went to a private school hearing they have a good nursing program, but she was doing all the pre-nursing classes there and didn't get into the nursing program. So she had a lot of debt and then later went to a public school for nursing, but had to pay back that debt for the
Sure.
prerequisites. And she was married to an American-born man who said, "Hey, I heard this private school is great for nursing." You know, and she was going with the best information she had. So I think, you know, navigation is a great place to put some policy behind to support folks through that process.
Interesting. Okay. And NCLEX, just so for those of us who aren't necessarily versed in nursing, that's the test to get licensed for nursing or to be able to apply for a license?
Exactly. Yeah. And it's public information. It's on the Board of Nursing website. Every school that offers, say, an RN associate program, you can see the last 4 years of their passing rates so that you can make an educated decision about where do you want to study. And we tell our clients, don't go to a school with lower than 75% or 80% passing rate for the average of the last 4 years, because you don't want to be, you know, the 1 in 5 or more than 1 in 5 that doesn't get the job or pass the board exam after you're educated.
Well, I think all three of you are raising very interesting point about understanding the American educational system and navigating through that system. I'll start with Rita. What recommendations do you have? What can we do as a city or as a county level, maybe, helping to develop mechanisms or policies to help people understand the American educational system and how to navigate through it?
You mean short of being in it for a few years?
Right.
It's an extraordinarily complex system. I think that Brooke brought up a very good point in the illustration that she mentioned, which is to say that we need to make sure that there is a financial underpinning. We absolutely, you know, without the money to make it, to move forward, we are looking at exactly the kind of students who have exhausted every avenue. And for an immigrant or a new refugee, it's even worse because they have truly exhausted every avenue and do not have a safety net of the family or the community that they want to come to. We are currently dealing with 2 students who are college-age students who are from Afghanistan. Their parents have got no money to send them even to a place as affordable as Metro State, where the annual tuition is only $9,000, but they have absolutely no funds. So the idea that somehow we need to have a policy to have some kind of a no interest loan or have some kind of a financial incentive for people to be able to come back. I know that it is not possible necessarily to set aside large sums of money, but it could be repayable. And I think back of my experience with the Grameen Bank model, which actually for business, but those are micro loans that are given out to people with no interest, which can also be culturally appropriate. Again, we are looking at a cultural appropriate, you know, the cultural, it fitting into the culture of a faith tradition that may not be the majority faith tradition in Minnesota. And if we could actually come up with a policy that puts a pot of money for no interest loans to people to be able to finance their credentialing. We do have systems in place which will perform it, and they will even give it to you for nothing. But again, to take the next step forward after an assessment has been done, this is important. The other thing that we could do, that as a community we could do, is to have agencies and counselors, people who are actually more like career counselors, who would be part of the assessment. They could learn from their university. We are a state university. Metro State is a state university. We will be happy to provide the next steps to that, to make sure that we provide the pathway of having that conversation with anybody who would need to be. The person does not need to come only to Metro State. They may want to go to University of Minnesota. They may want to go to a private institution, but an assessment would really help the institution build a pathway for them. So it would be good to have some kind of an office that would provide a comprehensive assessment. This could be done on the legislative level.
Wonderful. That is a great suggestion. Okay, Jean, what do you think? I think you did address this topic. Brooke, what do you think of building an office that could do assessments?
I think that's a great idea. Yeah, and in our proposal to work with the internationally trained medical folks, we were working together with the Credit for Prior Learning folks at Metro in Minnesota State. And yeah, that needs to be built up. It's just starting, and some institutions have it, but it isn't widespread yet. So I think that's a great idea. I was also thinking about incentivizing employers to create positions, to reimburse for positions that that immigrants and refugees go to school for. Incentivize the creation of more residencies for internationally trained medical graduates. I know that there's funding through the Office of Rural Health for immigrant doctors to fill those positions. Yes, there's a shortage there, but where do the immigrants live who can best be served by immigrant doctors who speak multiple languages, who fluidly move between cultures? Probably it's more here in the Twin Cities. And if there were an incentive for the area hospitals to create and support that population, rather than only the one idea of plug these holes over out in the rural area, I think that is one solution, yes, but there can be more, and I think there's a lot of room for creativity there, and just keeping as we try to do in the nonprofits, a client-centered, keeping the focus on the folks that we're trying to serve here. Look for trends, reinvent your curriculum, move with the times and with the changing population. I think there needs to be a change in employers, and also in our legislation that prioritizes the group that we're talking about, the groups we're talking about, right? So it's very broad, but some specific ideas.
I want to add one thing. When we say we need to help immigrants, I think I would say we need to invest in our state and our region, because when we have educated workforce, we have a better outcome. I think this is not about doing good thing, it's about business proposition. It's investing in our future. So, investing in our future means those untapped assets. Let's say we have a doctor spend the entire of their life. We're just giving them a small investment. The return on investment is huge. I think we need to think of not only just helping, perspective. People in nature want to help themselves. They just need opportunity. They need opportunity. That is a resource. It's investment we do in other region in order to be competitive. So I think I want to add that perspective, because they are asset for our region. So seeing them as asset, not as a deficit. So that encourage, incentivize people to do more if we value the asset they already have.
Thank you, Gene. I agree with you. And as a city attorney and working, one of our main missions at the city of St. Paul is to promote equity within the city, and I think really what you're talking to is something that also goes beyond the immigrant and refugee communities, as you said. It is a kind of it should be a business perspective, because we're looking at human asset, human beings who bring value And if we look at, in investing in those human assets, so to speak, it really will help this community. And it is, looking at through an equity lens, looking at, everyone's coming from a different starting point. So in order to have equality, we got to bring everybody up to that certain point, and again, not see it as, something as someone who's taking away, but really we're building something up so that we can all prosper. And I think that is such a valuable point that all three of you actually have touched on, and I thank you very much. We've also touched a little bit today on cultural barriers. Why don't we talk a little bit about cultural barriers? Dean, what kind of cultural barriers are you seeing that we really need to think about and try to address through some of our policy changes?
Oh, thank you. Culture and nature is the way of living, as you all know, and coming from different places, there is different perspective. Just for example, I was raised when I was a little boy, born down for elders and people who are higher in position is expected. When I came here, I did exactly the same thing what I was trained, be a good boy. And I I did it for quite a long time. And then one day my area manager, she said, gee, I know you are a very honest guy. I know you are a hardworking person. That's why we hired you as a management. But in our culture, if you don't look at someone eye, you're not telling the truth. It was just, oh my God. I said, oh, I was respecting her. One, she's my boss. Two, she's older person. I was doing good thing the way I was trained. But here it's different. She gave me a chance. She gave me a chance to see my culture is not the only truth. There are multiple truths. There's her perspective is right in her culture. I was right in my own culture, but I'm in different world. I still struggle. That's how I was shaped. I know how to turn back. Now I know how to turn back, say, look at someone, I'm making a mistake. I still do it, but I turn back. That, being open to give a chance someone, this is the way you sing. One thing that we struggle as Minnesota, we don't tell someone until they fail. We don't tell someone, we think that we offend. If it wasn't for Judy, I would have done the same thing until now. It's over 20 years ago. She gave me that chance. She opened up. She knew something was wrong. She knew something that needed to, she gave me a chance. So we need to be open as a society, what we do, we do just our own perspective. So there's definitely, it's as organization, what that really means in as organization. We create organizational culture, we craft our organizational culture. If, your team want to pray, are you ready to accommodate? If your team, as federal holidays, we all as organization, we crafted as human resource manual for our staff. And most of us, we have holiday that's known by Christian value. Don't get me wrong, I'm a Christian, brought up a Christian, and a Christian during my life. But there's other also who celebrate their own holidays. How the organization can accommodate other who don't believe, we don't believe, and including our, adapting to our human resource matter. That's what we do. one example, another example, our client where they come, not our only staff, it's in our staff, it's a norm to pray the time they want. But when the client come, they ask for room, they ask for rug to pray. So being open to other who don't really look like us, and creating environment that accommodate other. And I think that when people started embracing the not only the workforce being inclusive, I'm part of it. What that really means, as organizations, we say when people fit to the fabric of society, they invest, they succeed in education because they see I am part of the fabric. They contribute more, they do more, they work so hard. If they see this is mine, it's mine, I have a part, I have a role to play, I have a role to succeed, and I have a role to contribute. I think looking that perspective, it's helpful for not only for individual but for a region. It's a great way to solve the issue we have.
Great. Thank you, Jean. Brooke, what do you think?
I love what you shared, Jean. Thank you. I've seen so similar things happen with clients, and for the most part, we work with nursing students. There was a fellow who also wasn't looking at his clinical instructor in the eye. He failed his clinical. He failed it because she thought he was not all there and not giving her the, attention and respect that she thought he should. And we had a meeting with the dean and, kind of got to the bottom of this. Well, there was a lack of cultural curiosity and honestly of cultural humility. And this happens a lot of times where, you just assume folks should do it the way that we do it here, right? Because that's the way it's been done for years and years and years. And I think we need to have more of an openness. We at the International Institute, we have Monday off for Eid. I'm not going to be celebrating Eid, but many of my colleagues will be, right? So there's a turning point where an organization can say, hey, let's be more open to what everyone here is celebrating. So cultural holidays, I think, you talked about a place to wash, a place to pray. If you're working with a predominantly Muslim, or even, some of your staff or clients are need those services. Understanding, like having an open mind to, I'd like to understand a little bit more about this month of Ramadan. The Council of Churches has the opportunity to go and visit mosques and learn about iftar. You can go in and have a meal together with our Muslim brothers and sisters and learn about it. We're going to have invite colleagues to go and do that as a group, so that we can become a little bit more open-minded. Organizations, employers, we all need to have a little bit more cultural humility. And that really is just putting yourself in somebody else's shoes. I attended a graduation one time, and this girl who was born and raised in Minnesota looked a lot like me. She said, here's my experience, but who I really want to call attention to are the folks who came here from another country, and they did everything that I did in a language that wasn't their first language. They brought in their perspective to the clients and the patients that we served. And they're able to do it better because they have this openness of mind, that, like Jean was saying, like Rita said, that's an asset. We need as a community to think about that as an asset. You can serve our population better as a healthcare worker, as a hospitality worker, because you understand things that I maybe don't from my limited perspective, right?
Thank you, Brooke. That's cultural humility is something that I think is so important, and thank you for both Jean and Brooke. Rita, what do you think?
There's not a whole lot I can add to it, except this is what I would say. Even if I took two blonde, blue-eyed young women from Minnesota, they would be very different. So some idea of being open to cultural humility will actually make us better humans to even each other, even people who we think are exactly the same. Because I will tell you, I may be a woman of color, but I'm married to a white man. And I will tell you that no two white men I've seen, they are very different. So again, it will help us understanding a difference you can see will help us understand differences we cannot see. And I think it makes us just deeper, better as a community and as human beings. Happier people make happier places. I'm going to go back to what Jean started out with. Are we going to create an atmosphere where everybody wants to be, where everybody feels celebrated, not just welcome? This is not one person saying, oh, you come to my house and here is something for you. No, you belong as much as anybody else does. And I think that because I work on the east side of St. Paul, which is a traditionally immigrant community, this is what I have seen. My opening up my eyes will actually help me open up my eyes, not just to the people I'm directing it at, but to everybody in my community, which makes for a happier community. So cultural humility towards all is what I would advocate. I will put a cautionary tale here. This will take business and our existing systems time and resources. So this is not something that is going to say, oh, well, now everybody go out and be open-minded. That's not how it works. It will take systematic education, reinforcement, observance of iftar. I mean, actually publicly acknowledging. At Metro State, we start every public event with land acknowledgement. And that's what we've been doing for the past so many years, because it has to take an intentional, deliberate, proactive public acknowledgement at every point before it becomes a habit. If it's just something that is good to do, it will remain on the shelf. So companies, organizations, governments need to put some money and some personnel behind this education that needs to be ongoing for a while.
Thank you. Thank you, all three of you, for your insightful comments. I do know we have about 5 minutes left, and if there are any questions, I would encourage participants to put those questions in the chat now. But before we break, I really want to address one last issue. I think all three of you work at institutions that are doing some amazing work. And what I see is that other institutions may not necessarily know the work you're doing, and for sure, immigrant and refugee in our communities don't necessarily know about these opportunities. So I'm wondering if you have any suggestions for how do we get the word out about these programs? How do we get the word out about these ideas and develop these ideas into actual programming? So I throw that out. I'll start with Jean. How do we get the word out?
Thank you. I think community engagement is the key. Knowing that also how you reach out to the community is another work. Different communities have different engagement tools. And one of the community, tools that we do here is Little Africa Annual Festival, which we do every summer. We have a celebration. This year we're doing August 7th at Hamlin Midway Park. So last we had over 12,000 people show up to the festival 2019 when we have in person. This year we do in person as well. So it's community engagement being in the community is the key to outreach, because flyers might not work. Facebook can work, but more to have deep conversation with the public, with the community, is being at the community event is the key to reach out to people.
All right, community engagement. Rita, what do you think?
I think we should do more of what you've already done, Edmundo, is get a group of people, like-minded people. If you think that there are other institutions that can replicate what we do, what we could do is we could organize sessions and invite those who would like to learn to be part of a conversation, not necessarily instruction. And it would be a sharing of experience. I think that knowledge is a terrible thing to keep to yourself. So most definitely, for for this particular initiative to hold information sessions, to hold information conversations, and invite people and say, you're welcome to come. It will catch on once people see how valuable it is. It will.
Great, thank you. All right, Brooke, you're gonna get, thank you, Rita. I appreciate those comments. Brooke, you get the last word. We got about 30 seconds.
30 seconds. Okay. I would say our biggest outreach is clients themselves, right? Encouraging our alumni to become active advocates for the programs that they benefited from, and also to become leaders in our organization. I have a former client who's now on our board. We have several nurse instructors in our nursing assistant program who've been through our programs, asking folks, from the very beginning, here's some opportunities to give back, to become leaders, and then please spread the word. I'll send out mass emails to everybody I've ever had any contact with and say, pass this on to somebody else, if you can't benefit from it or use the information yourself, and just more of that. Ask the folks that we work with, right?
All right. Well, thank you. I'd like to thank you, Brooke. I appreciate sharing is always the best way to get, and word of mouth is wonderful. I just want to say thank you to everyone who joined us today, and I especially want to thank our three wonderful panelists for this thought-provoking and insightful discussion about policies that we might be able to implement and things that we can do as individuals, as employers, as cities, as institutions, to really help our immigrant and refugee communities feel like they belong in the Twin Cities. If you want to learn more about this initiative, you can read the Journey to Belonging, which is available on the Minneapolis Chamber website, as well as St. Paul City website. This work is just the beginning of what we're trying to do with this report. We encourage everyone to get involved and share their thoughts on how these strategies may become a reality. And I know both the cities of St. Paul and Minneapolis will be doing further engagement, and the chambers as well, throughout this year on many of these specific programs and initiatives that are outlined in the report. I thank you all again for joining us today, and look forward to talking with all of you again in the near future. Take care.